I do think there's something about diverse mindsets and particularly diversity in how you go about solving problems that can be so valuable. I feel like there's, some classic examples. You'll hear sometimes in the engineering world, different schools of thought on how you go about solving things. There are even different schools of thought of, people from certain, backgrounds will come at things very analytically, right? The way they're going to analyze this problem is with equations, with modeling, calculations. There's also a very different mindset of how you solve an engineering problem, and that's with uh, build it, test it, see how it works. And those are kind of like two very different schools of thought, and they both can be hugely valuable at different times. And if you have a team that is all on the analytical side, the calculations, the analytical, you're probably going to be hindered because you can't learn everything that way. And you may spend weeks and months building advanced models that are not grounded enough in the real world. On the flip side, if you have a team that's only doing the build it, test it, you may be spending a lot of time creating something that fails, and you're missing a fundamental physics aspect of it. So, if I was building a team and I had my choice of people out there, I would want some people on that team that come at things from that analytical perspective, so that when we say, "Hey, why is this? Why when we're trying to pump this fluid, is it doing this peculiar thing?" They would say, "Oh, well, let me just do a really quick, I don't know, maybe basic Bernoulli's equation, maybe just run a quick CFD. That'll help me understand it." But maybe when I task my team with solving this problem, one person's going off to do those equations, that modeling, and simultaneously another person's going off with a completely different perspective on how to solve that, which is, well, I'm just going to go throw together a quick cartridge. I'm going to hook it up to a quick pump in the basement, and I'm going to run a quick test, and I'll be able to diagnose it that way. And in an ideal world, if you've got that team set up right with those diverse perspective on solving a problem, when you bring them back together the next day and say, well, what did you learn? Ideally, the person that said I'm going to build it and test it came back and they have some interesting video of how it actually played out, and they learned something about physically testing it. At the same time, the person that did the analytical aspect of it comes back and said, yeah, I can show right here with this equation or right here with this modeling why that didn't work. So if you can draw on both those, and most people, their brain is wired a little bit more towards the one than the other. And I think that's a really good example. And you could apply the example I mentioned, fluidics, but you could take any other engineering problem. The pump isn't working, your heater isn't working, you're getting weird electrical noise. On the electrical noise is the way to solve it, to go back to base physics. Possibly that's probably valuable. Is it also to maybe throw it in some kind of, RF emissions chamber and test what's going on there? Yeah, it's really valuable. So I think in so many engineering things, if you can be both coming at things from calculations, fundamentals, but also from what quick tests can we do to prove it out? Those two things combined can be really powerful.
Do you think you can interview to tease out as you're building a team to tease out the mind that you're hiring?
Definitely. And you could take any one of those examples, toss out that challenge to
Hmm,
someone. Say,
I like that.
"Hey, I just built this small little PCR related heater. This heater has to go up against a cartridge. And I ran my first test, and I'm not getting the temperature ramp rates I expected to get in that PCR chamber. What would you do?" Right? An interview question. You ask that person, what would you do? What's your next step?
Right.
It would be interesting to see what they say. Um, maybe your ideal candidate lists all those things I just talked about. They would list both running some quick tests and going back to some modeling. Maybe that the person you already have on your team has a PhD in the modeling side. So what you're looking for in this next hire is the person that says, "Oh, I'm going to run down to the lab, throw some thermocouples in there, turn on the heater real quick, grab some data. Then I'm going to modify the thermal mass of it. And once I change that, I'm going to change the thermal conductivity of the film on the PCR chamber." We do all of those things together. I definitely think you can, understand how people think by giving them some little test, engineering problems like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and it also, as you're talking, it brings up an interesting topic as you're trying to build these teams, and maybe we can wrap up with this thought to hammer home your diversity point. But you want to hire people that are unlike you, right? And we've heard that, and I think the reason why is because you need diversity, right? You need people who are thinking differently from you to complement you, to help you solve these problems that require all these different heads together in a room. And I do think, our the people that we're interfacing with here at Key Tech, like, understand that. And but it's good to hear it also in this podcast. And I think it's helpful for them also to kind of get some tips from us, right, on what are the most important hires to make when you're trying to build this team. It's the technical project manager, it's a systems engineer. Maybe those two need to have diverse, mindsets, right? So yeah, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, really, right? And there's a lot that you could get into on structuring these teams, how to run projects, how to manage them, how to lead them. But I feel like our clients are really struggling with building those teams, and that's really where I think they need to spend a lot of their time. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, totally agree. I think it's so easy to think about, most of us are really good at a lot of aspects of life, but we all have weaknesses. And so to your point of that diverse thinking there, hiring people that fills in our weaknesses, that's how you make a really great team.